Well, it's been 2 weeks since we've done a show, and nothing's really happened in that time.
No.
Nothing. Everything's status quo. There's nothing really to talk about that's not sports related.
Life is going on as usual. Yeah.
The biggest story this weekend was obviously the WNBA All-Star team beating Team USA Women's. It had the biggest story this weekend had nothing to do with a possible a coup of democracy in one party. It's certainly nothing big to talk about. Everyone's focused on sports right now. That's really what it's
no question. Yeah. No, that's clearly that's clearly what's happening.
We needed Patrick Mahomes' throw to Xavier Worthy so bad on the Twitter timeline. That was such a refreshing.
That was the palate cleanser.
It was so good yesterday afternoon to see that deep ball from Mahomes to Xavier Worthy, because it was nothing but like democracy is falling. We're all being lied to. Conspiracy theory. Did Joe Biden actually sign that letter? Oh, look at that deep ball from Mahomes to Xavier Worthy. Oh, God, that is sick.
Hey, let's not forget, I don't know if you've seen this, but Nick Castellanos strikes again.
He's undefeated. He's undefeated.
I looked it up on YouTube to see how many occasions. So this will be 5 times that Nick Castellanos has hit a home run during breaking news or some important news on a broadcast.
It's crazy.
So it's something about Nick Castellanos. He's the guy.
Cubs should have never let him go. They should have never let him go.
It was wild. Yeah, interestingly, but before we actually go into the sports news that we're here to talk about, Grace and I were in Washington, D.C. when the news of Trump being shot at came down. It was bizarre. It was like maybe 7 o'clock at night in D.C. We were waiting in line to go see a live show that we were going there for. And one of the employees who just came out to smoke a cigarette was just looking on her phone, and she just turns to us in line. She goes, "Did you guys see that Trump just got shot?" I was like, excuse me? I was like, what?
It is one of those moments of like
going down.
You'll remember where you were. I will. In all seriousness, like I remember where I was. I was in the Quad Cities, driving around. My stepson had a swim regionals, and we were just leaving a restaurant. And my wife was on the phone. I'm driving. She goes, "Trump just got shot." I'm like, "No, he didn't. Like, don't. What is that? Like, that would be big news. I would hear about that." So yeah, he just got shot. Show me the photo. I'm like, holy crap! You pull out your phone, you realize it's happening. Hey, what show were you seeing? Chuck Schumer's weekly stand-up? Was it him with Nancy Pelosi opening?
Yeah, she was a special guest. She was only on right at the end. But
did you ever hear that? Did you ever hear the Joe Rogan story about Joe Biden night at a comedy club in Philadelphia when he was like in the late '80s, early '90s?
No.
Joe Rogan.
He actually did like a show.
Joe Rogan talked about it in the Joe Rogan podcast. It was just like a month ago now. I'm not a diehard Rogan listener, but I catch episodes that I find the guest interesting, and I want to hear what they have to say because he does a good job of opening the guest up. And he talked about how they used to do Joe Biden night at this comedy club that he worked at in, I think it was like Pennsylvania somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was that night you would come to the set and the comics would do the other person's routine because Joe Biden had to drop out of the presidential race in the late 80s because he was caught plagiarizing.
88, I think. Yeah.
And so they would do Joe Biden night where the comics would do each other's acts and they'd call it Joe Biden night. That's pretty fun.
There you go. How about
He's a stand-up guy. He's a man of character.
Literally.
That's all you're hearing on Twitter today, a man of character.
Man of character, indeed. Well, we've certainly got our work cut out for us in the next month or so when it comes to figuring out where we're going as a
the
world.
The NFL will distract us, as it always does.
The NFL will provide that necessary distraction. We've got some news, of course, over the last 2 weeks that has come down in the NFL ranks. We've got a couple signings to get to, as well as Brandon Aiyuk requesting a trade. We've got Jordan Love holding out practice until he gets a new contract, and we've got some other news to get to as well. Don't have a show open today, Mark, so we're just going to dive right into it.
Let's go for it.
Let's talk about a couple of these recent contracts, get that out of the way, and then we'll start to talk about Jordan Love here. But we'll stick with the Packers for a quick second. Kenny Clark gets a big extension with the Packers, 3 years, $64 million contract. We were talking about who were some of the best players on teams last time we were here speaking. Kenny Clark was in that conversation for being the best player on the Packers. And here he gets into a pretty substantial deal. So Green Bay getting some more, D-line infrastructure in place there, which they're going to need now that, Jared Goff is, ascending in his career still. And now that Caleb Williams arrives on scene.
I think this was one of those deals to where it's like the Packers are trying to get the deal done with Jordan Love. So this helps them know the finances better. Let's get the Kenny Clark deal done. Let's structure it in a certain way. Now we know the wiggle room we have with Jordan Love. I also think it is interesting because if you're Jordan Love's camp, you could look at this and be like, oh, well, you get that deal done. Is that taken away from my piece of the pie? Are they trying to force us in a way now? Be like, oh, well, now we have less money. So we'll see if the Jordan Love deal drags out. This Kenny Clark deal could be a part of maybe why the Jordan Love deal is dragging out. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But he's a great player and certainly an anchor to that young and improving Green Bay Packers defense.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And then on the offensive side of the ball for the Denver Broncos, which I thought was a phenomenal signing, Quinn Meinerz, the guard, agrees to a 4-year, $80 million extension, $24 million in the first year of the deal. Former D3 player out of Whitewater, Wisconsin. So pretty cool to see him kind of have that ascension in his career. I know him well because the Steelers took a center out of Illinois at the time over Quinn Meinerz, and that didn't end up working out too well, but Quinn Meinerz certainly has. And that's what you want with a rookie quarterback, right?
Yeah, he's a great story. This is what you can spend money because you don't have money tied up to your quarterback position long term. I mean, they're still paying the Russ money this year, but then that comes off the books. He's quickly become one of the best interior offensive linemen in the league. Lock him up. Smart deal. You're just going to see a couple other deals like this again through the rest of training camp. Guys working on things, extensions. Teams love this. Is a good time of the year to spend money because fan bases are excited. You don't want to spend money when your team is in the dumps or things aren't going well. This is a good time. Fans can get excited about spending money on a guard when the season's still about to begin.
Yeah, and you get that, stability in place early enough for Bo Nix and whoever else, is going to be under center for the Denver Broncos this upcoming season. The Broncos, as we know, were pretty short-staffed on their roster in terms of stars. So to be able to lock down one of the better guards and young guards in the NFL, was kind of a no-brainer. I know that they're hurting for money, financially with the Russell Wilson dead cap, but when you've got somebody that young, that talented, to be able to lock them up is definitely a good sign. They're going to have to, kind of play catch up here as a team, organization as a whole, and this is one way to do that. All right, let's transition to the more prescient current news that has come out, which is Jordan Love is not currently practicing and not planning to practice, as all training camps will be started by this Wednesday. I know some teams have started a little bit earlier, but Wednesday is like that, official first day of camp. But Jordan Love not going to be practicing until an extension gets done. His agents have told that to Packers GM Brian Gutekunst. And so Gutekunst will be addressing the media, I believe, earlier today as well, or did already.
He did.
I do have this. Okay, yeah, I have this tweet from Ian Rappaport here that says, quote, Packers GM Brian Gutekunst speaking to the reporters today says that he's optimistic about a deal getting done for quarterback Jordan Love and that one could get done in the next couple of days. Until it does, Love won't practice, as his agents told Gutekunst. So there we have it. What do we make of this? My initial thoughts, super smart on Jordan Love's part. I don't think it's ideal for the Packers, but at the same time, if they get a deal done early enough and he works out, they're going to obviously be excited about that. If he doesn't work out, then it's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, well, this is really, to me, getting interesting. And this could be over by the time we're done recording this, and it's not. But why I think this is getting interesting is, remember, it's now been about 3 months of the Packers saying, we're getting a deal done. We're going to get a deal done. We want to get a deal done. And they were very, very, very strong with their wording when the mini camps broke a month ago. We'd have a deal done before camp started. Camp's now started, and he's not in camp now. So someone's lying or someone's not being truthful, or someone keeps moving the goalpost, right? Whereas they were close, and then someone inches it, and now it's like, oh, how do we get close again? I don't know which party it is that's moving the goalpost, but this is getting, to me, to be a really juicy story. And again, it could be over in any second. But until it is over, it seems as though now, in my opinion, because it's taking this long, the money will be more than Trevor Lawrence. It's now how much more than Trevor Lawrence. And at what point in time does the Packers organization play a little hardball with Jordan Love, or are they willing at this point in time to just get this kind of headache over with and get him into camp? I don't think the Packers organization thought that Jordan Love would miss camp. So I think this is maybe a little shock to them. And I think this is probably going to help Jordan Love speed this deal up. And now Packers fans, if the money is big and if it's considerably more than Trevor Lawrence, I mean, that is a gigantic paycheck and a gigantic cap hit. And if Jordan Love doesn't ball out this year and lead the Packers again to a playoff run, then he's going to put himself under a big microscope for holding out, forcing a giant contract. With that giant contract comes giant expectations. Last year, Jordan Love had no expectations. We just wanted to see him play, and he exceeded those no expectations by a mile. So now the expectation is Jordan Love is a second round or better quarterback in the playoffs. Well, especially if you're getting paid like it. Now you got to live up to those expectations. And we both agree the Vikings are better. The Bears are better. The Lions are just as good. So life's not exactly going to be easy for Jordan Love whenever he gets this deal done. And depending on how much time you miss in camp, you're going to be really behind the eight ball. Needless to say, I'm really enjoying this story. And I really, really, really hope he continues to hold out for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention how young the team is and how they really only have 1 year together, Jordan does, in terms of consistent first team reps with these guys. You got to be able to take every possible chance you have to develop further chemistry. And obviously, he's been there the whole offseason. He's worked out with his receivers and all of that. But yeah, I mean, every practice matters. And now more than ever, when you only have so many allotted because of the new CBA, it's becoming even more impactful every practice that you miss. So yeah, from a Bears fan perspective, I can certainly see how every practice that gets missed is a win in your book.
Also, just the drama of the storyline. As a Bears fan, I love that I'm watching nothing but Caleb Williams throwing deep balls to Scott and Roma Dunze across the middle right now on my timeline. And on my rival's timeline, it's, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. They'll get a deal done. It's like, you've been saying that for 3 months now. And it's only getting more expensive every day it goes on. Because if you would have got a deal done 3 months ago, it would have been cheaper than Trevor Lawrence's deal. But you've waited, and you've waited, and you've waited. And now it's going to be maybe considerably more expensive than that deal. And that'll be fascinating to see, and how the Packers handle that cap. And also, Dan, we haven't really talked about this yet, but sophomore slumps are real. Now, I know that Jordan Love is going into year, 5 or 6? He's going into year 6, maybe 5?
I think this is year 5 for him.
And it's like maybe that doesn't feel as right, but every time we've had a pop from a young quarterback, it seems like the next year there is a slight step down. And that's something to be considered for CJ Stroud. It's something to be considered for, I think, Jordan Love, because Jordan Love started the season
year 4, actually. I'm surprised. I thought it was for sure 5, but no, year 4 for him.
Jordan Love started considerably slower. It's got to be year 5 because he's in Joe Burrow's class.
No, yeah, I'm just looking on Pro Football Reference, and of course, his first season they don't have stats for him. So yeah,
it's definitely year 5. But that idea of that sophomore slump, I think, is a real thing. Remember, Jordan Love started slow last year. They were below 500 through 7.
He came out of the gate. The first 2 games, he threw 6 touchdowns, no picks, and we thought, shit. And then there was like 5 straight weeks where he threw 10 interceptions in like a 6-week span.
Yeah, and LaFleur called him out, and he had a great end of the season. So,
Yeah.
again, this is getting very interesting, and I'll just say this. If the football gods are shining on the Bears this year, in a week from now, when we record next, this will still be a story. I am like, please, football gods, let us go into the Hall of Fame game next Thursday and have Jordan Love still not be signed. I would love that. We as a storyline, I think every person in football media would love that, because as of right now, we don't have any other real drama besides the Tua contract, the Dak contract. But the Dak contract's so old news, because the last time we had to go through the Dak contract 4 years ago, he was the fourth rounder who had never been paid. Dak's now made well over $100 million, fully guaranteed. And no one feels for Dak the way they did 4 years ago.
Well, and that's, part of this whole situation. I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminds me a lot of Dak in the fact, in the way that I don't think we know enough about Jordan Love. Now, the Packers probably do. They've had him in-house for over 4 years. They've seen him throughout. It's clear, whatever they pay him, it's clear that they feel comfortable paying him that because of what they've seen. But for us on the outside, as spectators, as, the analyst community and all of that stuff, from what we've seen, the reality is we have an 10 game span of him playing good football. And then a playoff run that was pretty impressive for someone who was just in their first year as a starting quarterback. All of that to be said, to pay somebody who you can say those credentials about, to pay somebody like that over $150 million guaranteed dollars on a contract seems kind of wild. It seemed like to pay him a Daniel Jones contract. It seemed crazy to pay Daniel Jones that, and it's true. Now, I think Jordan Love is a better overall athlete and better performer at this stage than Daniel Jones was when he got paid. So this makes a little bit more sense. But the point is still, the guy has had one season of starting play. He's really had 10 games plus postseason of quality play. Is that enough to justify, mortgaging your future potentially as an organization? Now it's the Packers. They're probably going to luck out with this deal, and he's going to be another Hall of Fame quarterback, of course.
Yeah.
And it's going to work out. But the thing is, it's good for Jordan Love because it's just the way that things are now. If you have one great season, you can monetize that instantly because some team is going to pay for you. So he has this to control.
Kyler Murray did. You're talking about the one great season. Jalen Hurts turned one great season into fully guaranteed big money. Did. Kyler Murray did. Trevor Lawrence did.
Justin Herbert
did. It is really Joe Burrow did with the Super Bowl run.
What do all those have in common? They've all panned out, I would say. I mean, Kyler Murray, maybe not. That's still to be
Kyler's. This is the make or break year for Kyler, and I think it's a make or break year for Jalen Hurts too. I mean, he got paid, and then last year was a disappointing end of the season and a rough year for him statistically wise. He wasn't the MVP candidate.
That's true.
He was 2 years ago. Here's the thing, Dan. I agree with you 100%. And I think most people do. The problem is also in the modern NFL, if you don't pay him now and you wait.
Right. It's just the price goes up. I know. Yeah.
The price goes way up. And you then run the risk of him being offended and wanting to walk. And then what? You franchise tag him. You're in a messy situation.
Yeah.
But
see,
you
that's
have to ask
the
yourself
that,
if the Packers,
Cowboys felt they were in.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why they pay Dak,
If you say to yourself, would you rather pay him what you're going to have to pay him now, which is probably like, close to $60 million a year and close to $200 million guaranteed to get above Trevor Lawrence money, and then hope it turns out? Or would you rather go the season, feel like, damn, no, this is great, he's our guy, this is amazing, and then have to pay him $220 guaranteed and $62 or $3 million? I personally would rather wait and see, right? Like, I'd rather wait and see and then pay him whatever you got to pay him when the market that next time. Because if you pay him now big time and you have a disappointing year and he doesn't make the playoffs and he struggles, well, then you are in a year from now, you're just in a pretzel as a fan. Then the coach on the hot seat. Is he the right coach for this quarterback? Do we need to go spend money on weapons? Why didn't it work? Like, you as an organization, look at what the Eagles had to go through this offseason. You fire coordinators, you're losing star players, you're trying to bring in other star players because you have a high-paid quarterback and you didn't meet expectations last year. Look what happened to the Chargers. You had a high-paid quarterback and you didn't meet expectations. You lost your job as a head coach. So when you have a high-paid quarterback and you don't meet expectations, that is a nightmare scenario. Ask Cliff Kingsbury how that went. It's a nightmare scenario for a franchise and for a head coach. So if you're Matt LaFleur, you're ready and prepared for as soon as he gets paid, you've got to make him successful, or else you're the guy on the line, not him, because they're tied to him for the next 5 years of that contract, 4 years, but before they can probably get out of it. You're the guy they're going to blame if you don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, it's they're caught in a difficult situation, but it could pan out for them, and then it's all well and good. I agree with you. I think that if it's a difference of $4 million per year, nobody has regretted and would regret any amount of money that Patrick Mahomes ended up getting paid.
Agreed.
No one's going to regret the Josh Allen contract. You're not going to regret a contract when you're 100% sure that you've got the guy. Doesn't matter if the price went up.
Yeah.
Be glad you waited. Be glad you did your due diligence, and you're not going to quabble over a few million per year. So I agree. I think at the end of the day, if you can feel 100% confident in your choice, then you go down with that ship if it
Agreed.
somehow goes down. But if there are question marks, which I think there were for Dallas, I truly think that they weren't. If they were 100% convinced, then I think that was poor analysis on their part overall.
Yeah, they waited
and that's
too
not
long.
even to say Dak's a bad quarterback. It's just he's not a $180 million guaranteed quarterback type of thing. Yeah. And so that's what you want to avoid.
Dan, we'll move on to the next thing, but I want to ask you really quickly. Here we are, late July. Training camp's just begun. Are the Packers a playoff team in your mind today, yes or no?
That is tough. I almost want to say no, only because I still think it's the Lions division. So I'm probably, spoiler alert, gonna pick the Lions to win the division this year. I think the Bears are so greatly improved from a year ago that I have a feeling they're going to be competitive and probably split the season series with Green Bay. The only thing Green Bay has going for them is that Minnesota got worse. Most likely, at least. I mean, I guess we don't know for sure, but most likely got worse. I just think it's a tough division. So all of that being said, the NFC is getting better as a whole, as a conference. It's tough. Green Bay's good. They're talented. I would not be shocked if they made the playoffs. I think they will have to make it as a wild card this year. And so what 3 spots are up for grabs for Green Bay to take? They're going to have to fight with some pretty good teams. They're going to have to fight with an NFC East team for sure, in my opinion. And they're probably going to have to fight with 2 NFC West teams, or one NFC West team, one NFC North team. So it's going to be close, I think.
I agree with you. Like, as of today, they're not the division winner for me, depending on what happens through camp and everything in the preseason. But so then you put your faith in the hands of the wild card. And as we know, that can be really, really dangerous depending on, what you do. I agree. I think Green Bay should have high expectations and should be competing for the division. I would say this morning, yes, they're a playoff team, but in the wild card. And I would say the longer they go into camp without Jordan Love and this becomes a story, the more I negatively slightly decline them down that wild card. I have them as maybe the 5th seed wild card, but if this becomes a 2-week story, that all of a sudden could, mean a slower start to the season. And now you're fighting for that 7th wild card, in week 17. So it's going to be really important, I think, for Green Bay to get this done. They've been telling us it's going to get done. Get it done, Green Bay.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about it, I think both the Rams and 49ers are probables to make the playoffs. I think
agree.
Both the Eagles and the the Cowboys are probably going to make it.
That's 4 of the 7.
I think the Bears have a shot. I think, that's going to be tough. I think I honestly think the Cardinals could have a shot. I think the Seahawks have a shot.
Seahawks, we'll see what they
So,
do with their new head coach.
yeah.
I agree. The
And
NFC,
maybe I don't know. I mean, is there an NFC? Could the NFC South send two teams? I don't know, but Tampa and New Orleans or the Falcons, like who? I don't know, but
to me,
yeah.
I feel strongly about Philly, Detroit, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, the Rams. Like I feel strongly that 4 of the 7 spots are taken. And then I would say the next team I feel strong about would be Green Bay. Like they're young, they're talented, great coach. They had a lot of momentum, but this story is a fascinating one to keep an eye out for.
Really
the Bears fan in me wants it to drag on, but I would just say in the NFL analyst hat on, I would be clamoring for Green Bay to get this done ASAP and get this drama over with. You do not want to be. It was the first story on Colin Cowherd's show this morning. You don't want to be the first story in Colin Cowherd's show. His camp is a week old. Like that's a negative thing. If you're talking about a quarterback drama, you don't want that. You don't want to be talked about in that way.
Yep. Nope. Very true. Agree with that. And I will change my answer to yes. Like I do actually think after talking it through that they are a playoff team right now, but it's wavering. All right. Let's get into Brandon Aiyuk real quick.
Yeah.
And then we'll round out the show with some quick thoughts on Caleb Williams. But Brandon Aiyuk, this has been kind of going back and forth for a couple months now, has wanted a new deal with the 49ers. Obviously, extremely talented wide receiver, big part of their playoff run, big part of their success as a team in general. Probably he's one of those 20 wide receivers that's a top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, agreed.
So he's clearly a wide receiver 1 talent. They've got 2 on their team with Deebo Samuel as well. 49ers are kind of they have a lot of good problems to have. And the latest being that Brandon Aiyuk wanted a new deal, and now it has boiled over to the fact where he has formally and publicly requested a trade, which was kind of something that had been alluded to for, several weeks to this point. Few teams been in the mix to be considered, early favorites. Pittsburgh, one of those teams. I think Buffalo, another one of those teams after Stephon Diggs departed. So there are some teams, probably a good 12 could absolutely use Brandon Aiyuk. 15 maybe. But there are quite a few that are, strong contenders and would be great spots for him to go. What do we make of this whole situation in general? Is it wise for the 49ers to not get a deal done when they're on the precipice of a Super Bowl win? Seemingly every year over the past 3-4 years, they haven't gotten over the hump. Can losing one of your better players actually help you? And then on the flip side, I'm curious your thoughts on who would be the best landing spot for Brandon Aiyuk, and what would the terms of this trade kind of have to be for it to make sense for San Fran?
If I'm San Francisco, I'm not paying Brandon Aiyuk. I'm just not paying him the money he wants. If he wants,
because it's going to be probably 30 a year, right? I mean,
if he wants Amon-Ra St. Brown money, who's now the 3rd highest paid wide receiver, where it's 80 million guaranteed and just about 100 million total. All right, we can maybe talk about that. If he wants above AJ Brown, if he wants closer to what Justin Jefferson's getting, where it's you're talking about 100 million guaranteed, I'd be on the phones trying to get a 2nd round pick for Brandon Aiyuk ASAP. You can't get too greedy. I keep hearing people you'll get a number 1 pick. No, because it's the same situation as all these disgruntled stars. I'm not going to give up a 1st rounder and then have to pay Brandon Aiyuk $100 million.
Exactly.
I'll give you a 2nd rounder because I can't guarantee I can get a Brandon Aiyuk in the 2nd round. Brandon Aiyuk is in his prime. The next 4 years are the prime, right? He's been healthy. He's been sturdy. He's a guaranteed number 1. I'll give you a 2nd rounder for that and then pay. I'm not giving you a 1st rounder and paying. The reports are, I heard one Twitter source that the Patriots were willing to offer a 2nd rounder. If you are, to me, the teams that should be in on this, Carolina, New England, Washington. Who else is a young quarterback
Buffalo,
who needs weapons?
Well, I think Buffalo just could use him.
Buffalo could use him. I'm not, but to me, the ones it's you should give up a 2nd rounder. Chargers. You should give up a 2nd rounder and you should then pay him. Young teams with young quarterbacks who need a weapon to help their young quarterback, right? That's where my brain goes, because you're needing, like, Indianapolis, Washington, Carolina, New England. Those would be my big, like, four. Maybe even a Pittsburgh, because you could be with Justin Fields, or next year you're drafting a quarterback, you have a young quarterback, right? So, like, give them an established number one. So those would be probably my top five that I would be like, I would, again, if my just NFL hat on, rooting interest side, I would encourage those teams to go after them. Would it shock me if a Josh Allen or a Chargers or someone else like that got into the ring because they're trying to win now and they're willing to say, screw it, we'll pay that guy big money because he's in his prime? No, and I would be for that. But to me, if you're going to give up that high of a pick and you're going to sign him to a giant deal, talking close to $100 million guaranteed, I would do that more if I was only one of those teams in the young quarterback situations at a bona fide star. And if I was San Francisco, I would not sign him to that type of deal. You can't afford it. You have a defense that's really important to you. You have a head coach who's brilliant and making mountains out of molehills. And you already have bona fide stars at other positions. You can't put that much money in him when you got to figure out if Brock Purdy's your guy or not. This is going to help you figure out if Brock Purdy is your guy or if he's just a guy. And if he's the guy without Brandon Aiyuk, well, then you're going to have to pay Brock Purdy a ton of money. So yeah. I think this is, if you can get a second-round pick and maybe a player back to help you this year for Brandon Aiyuk, do it. Do it. And get him out of camp and let him be a headache somewhere else. It's a great player, but you need to know if Purdy is your guy, and I'm not signing Brandon Aiyuk. Or you just say, screw it, we're going to play him this year, and we'll let him go for nothing and just say, take the loss in that way because we trust our GM or whatever, but we're going to go all in on this year and not sign him. I'm okay with that too. The whole, like, you have to get something for your guys, I think that's a little overrated. If you trust your GM, you have draft picks already like the Niners do, and you're just trying to win now. Like, you're still in a better position to win now and not sign him and let him walk than you are to trade him and have nothing to help you right now, or sign him and then you're stuck with this giant contract. Yeah, it could help you win right now, but then you're not helping you win in the long term, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally for them, it'd almost be like if they could maybe reverse things, have Aiyuk be the guy that they hung on to and be able to trade Deebo Samuel. But yeah, that contract is a little bit harder to get out of, and he's probably better for what they do as a system. Deebo is, but he's older, and he's
Shanahan
got a lot
just
of wear.
Loves Deebo.
He does, and he's great. Deebo is great. They're both fantastic players. Ayuk is going to be really good for whoever he gets traded to.
I mean, the Niners just drafted two young wide receivers. They drafted one in the second round.
They got Ricky Pearsall, out of Florida. Who's like, and they have Kyle Shanahan. He'll figure it out. Like he'll make weapons work. Jawan Jennings came up big at the end of last year.
And Purdy, to his credit, we poop on Purdy a lot, but he's accurate and he runs the system. So you don't need a Randy Moss type guy with Brock Purdy. You know what I mean? Like, it's great,
right,
but
true. It helps when you have a good run game and like can have things that alleviate that. But yes,
So would you trade him, sign him, or just keep him and maybe he walks? Like what? Like to me, I would go trade him 1, let him walk at the end of the year 2, sign him 3.
I'm in that hierarchy as well, just because I think that it's gonna. I don't think they can afford to keep him long term. So to me, like that's if they could somehow do some crazy finagling with to get him signed, then okay, maybe we could have that conversation, because McCaffrey's got maybe 2 to 3 more prime years ahead of him. So we'll see. I mean, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he has more. But there's a window there. Ayuk's still young enough. He's 26 years old. Like he can be a stalwart for 5 years in your system and be that guy. But I think overall, this is the year yet again for the 49ers to capitalize once again. You're gonna have to pay Purdy pretty soon. Yeah. So this is the year. Go after it again with your full staff. Try and get another ring. If it doesn't work out this year, then
he walks.
You let him walk, and you'll figure out what you're going to do at the quarterback position.
Or tag him.
and or tag him. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
here's the thing, wide receivers, I think this is going to be a moment for wide receivers to realize what the real market is, because he's a top 10 type of guy and he wants the big money. So will the market respond? Because if no one trades for him and then signs him, and if the Niners don't sign him, it's a warning to all other wide receivers. If you get mouthy and you think you're worth more than you are just because, Justin Jefferson got nuclear money, you might end up on the raw end of the deal where you get no money, you're getting franchise tagged, and no one wants you anyways, and you just now got a diva label on you. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown's deal, and some of these guys take their money, go to work. It's good money, really good money. The team shows you you're important. But if you're starting begging for that $100 million mark to, I'm this guy, there's a lot of wide receivers coming out in the draft that are easy to just grab in the second, third, fourth round.
Yeah, we talked about it ad nauseum on this show about how easy it is to find really quality wide receivers nowadays in the draft. Every year there's 2 to 3 that become stars in the league. And so you take a 5-year span, and that's getting you to about half the league full of stars, adding to the already existing group of stars that there are. I want to shift gears here as we end the show, then take the next few minutes here to get your thoughts on the Caleb Williams situation, to talk about training camp with the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Williams was one of the final rookies to get his deal inked. It was probably a little bit longer than some wanted, but at the end of the day, I also think that this gets made a big deal out of when it really isn't. It's, minor things here and there in contracts that are just getting worked out between the agents and the teams, and they always get done, right? But Caleb Williams officially gets his fully guaranteed $39 million 4-year rookie contract inked, $25 million of that being a signing bonus. They get that set. I know Roma Dunce signed his contract as well, and got a nice bonus there. So everything's set now for the Chicago Bears. The table is set and ready for them to begin this next chapter of the franchise. Training camp, I believe, did they report on the 16th or whatever? So were they already out there together as a team for closing in on a week at this point? I just want to get your thoughts on the contract situation real quick, but then also just how you're feeling about the mojo and the vibes going into this pivotal part of the year.
Well, the contract to me is really interesting because we come down to from the reports I've read, and I trust a lot of the people in the Bears organization who cover the Bears I trust, is that what he was really trying to do was avoid Illinois taxes. So when he got his NIL money in California, obviously high taxes like Illinois, he set it up through an LLC. And you're allowed to do that in college with this NIL deal because there's really no rules with the NIL. So when you do that through a business, you get to write off taxes in a different way, and you make a lot more of the money. That it's Caleb Williams Enterprises versus Caleb Williams making the money. He was, I think, trying to get a deal done through the LLC or trying to find things out so you could avoid Illinois taxes. The NFL, though, has all these rules against that. Because he doesn't have a traditional agent, the rumors swirl, and I think he had to kind of learn that the hard way, where if he had an agent, they would just tell him, no, you can't do that. And so this is the best you could do, and here's what the NFL will and won't allow. 2 thoughts on that. I love how creative he is. I love that he's smart in that way, that he's trying to avoid the Illinois taxes. Apparently, he's done a lot of his brand deals and everything through the LLC, so he is avoiding Illinois taxes and a lot of other ways to make money. Good for him. He's smart. He's got good people around him. That's all things I love. More importantly, the second part of your question, what do I think about him so far in camp? We got our first word from Eberflus about what his usage is going to be in the preseason. Now, remember, the Bears, because they're in the Hall of Fame game next Thursday, have 4 preseason games. Everyone else has 3. The Bears and the Texans have 4 because that extra one. The Hall of Fame game is really just kind of an extra game, right? They said they're looking at recent rookies from the last 2 years. I think it was C.J. Stroud they referenced, Bryce Young they referenced, and then one other quarterback that they did anywhere about 44. I think Anthony Richardson was the other one. 44 to 55 reps, they called it, throughout the entirety of the preseason. If you label that out over a 4-game stretch, to me that would mean he probably plays a series. In the game against the Texans, maybe 2 series. then plays probably a quarter in the second game, a quarter and a half in the third game, and then sits out the fourth and final game. That, to me, is what I would imagine it would be. If that's the case, I'm okay with that. I get that reps are important, but I also get that I'm not playing Caleb Williams any single snap in the preseason if he does not have his starting offensive line. If you have backup offensive linemen in there, I don't care what rep number it is. He should not be playing behind. I don't care who he's throwing to. That's not as important. They get the timing and they get the things in practice, right? The joint practices. Sure. They'll build the chemistry. I am not putting him out there for live bullets if he does not have his full starting offensive line. That's point blank. 45 to 55 reps. I'm okay with that. I'll live and die by that sword because, again, the only thing that's worse than going into a season where you have a high-paid quarterback like the Eagles right now and you're unsure of the expectations and your coaching staff is going into a season where you're really excited for your quarterback and then your quarterback is injured. That is the worst place to be in the world.
Terrible.
So yeah. I like that plan. I like the Bears are thinking about the plan, and I like that the kid is creative. Glad they got the deals done, and we're ready to ball out.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Hard Knocks obviously gonna be featuring them. They've already been featuring the New York Giants for the offseason edition. So really excited to see. I know you're not super crazy.
The Giants' offensive offseason one has been wild. I mean,
very interesting how much access they've given.
Yeah, when you're getting the owner saying, if we lose Saquon, I'm going to be pissed, and then they lose Saquon, it's like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah. No, Joe Shane seems to be much more on the hot seat than even anticipated ahead of all of this. So.
He does not give me the. I have one thing I know for certain: Ryan Poles is going to look good in this Hard Knocks for the Bears. He's smart.
There's a
he's strong. He's a big man. He played offensive line. I think he's going the weight he commands. Like, you're not going to get the clips you're getting from the Giants. Are like, this is the guy making calls to Saquon, and he can't get anything done. He looks like an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not worried about that with Ryan Poles.
They showed a lot of those conversations and stuff. So, yeah, that was definitely surprising, especially for a blue blood franchise like the New York Football Giants that, was curious to say the least. But all right, well, glad we got to kind of regroup on all of the news from the last couple of weeks and really more recently the last couple of days. So good to get that out of the way because we've got, jam-packed month ahead, which is going to include, as we always do, you can all anticipate the final 2 weeks before the regular season begins to get our full season predictions on, well, really not full season as much as it is playoff predictions and who's going to end up
records.
Where and records and all of that. So we'll do the AFC followed by the NFC or vice versa, however that works out. Do one of each for those last 2 weeks. We've got some interview shows coming up, which I'm really excited about. We're going to talk Patriots with a reporter, Dakota Randall from Pro Football Network. So that's really exciting. The beat reporter there for the Patriots. That should be great stuff. Before you know it, we're going to be into the regular season. But yeah, as early as next week, we're going to have some football to talk about with that Hall of Fame game. So looking forward to it. As always, appreciate the support. You can find us out at FB Lounge Pod. Be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Helps us out tremendously. And we'll see you back here next time.